and this is another player that I want to get your thoughts on because you recently wrote about him. I started round 4 with DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm just a little like there haven't been a lot of wide receivers to go in my draft. I'll say that people have been very focused on running backs and quarterbacks and tight ends, understandably so. But DeAndre Hopkins coming off 115 catches last year, over 1,400 receiving yards. Like those are numbers that take you to the Hall of Fame. You do that again and again for a few years, you go to Canton. And Hopkins is headed there, and I just think he's might have the best hands in the NFL, probably does. Just monstrously productive with whatever quarterback you give him. And you recently wrote about him as a plausible candidate to be the overall wide receiver 1. And he wasn't that far off last year, right? Like, I feel like he gets weirdly disrespected. And maybe that's just because we're so familiar with the brand, right? We know this guy and we've seen it year in and year out. I feel like there's a certain type of fantasy manager that would rather have the next big thing who can come close to what Hopkins does rather than just take Hopkins and his superior numbers.
Exactly. It's like the shiny new toy syndrome, right? It's like we
Yeah.
always want what's new. Hopkins, and it's weird how we have fatigue for somebody who's so good, but it's like it feels like DeAndre Hopkins has been in the league for like 20 years, right? It's not like exciting, like, yeah, he's good. But what about this new guy? What about AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
And a lot also people have like a dynasty perspective. Hop, it believes like he's 28, 29 or so around that range. And you're like, oh, this young dude, he's only 21. Again, like you said, it's all the next big thing. And DeAndre Hopkins, yeah, I made an argument that he could be wide receiver 1 because he was the wide receiver 1 last year until Kyler Murray got hurt in week 11. So it's not that far of a stretch. But one of the other reasons why I wrote this article, because I didn't see anybody have him ranked as the number 1 wide receiver. And there's so many reasons you can put him there. And let's look at some of his competition, right? So Devontae Adams might not have Rodgers. AJ Brown obviously just has Julio and a run heavy offense. That's going to affect it. Justin Jefferson, obviously you have Adam Thielen you have to worry about. Calvin Ridley, you have Kyle Pitts. I've seen a lot of Calvin Ridley wide receiver 1, but he might get stronger coverage against him now. So that's, he obviously had a great shot to still be it, but that's something you need to think about. So for me, you run it back with Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins. He was number 1 in route participation. I believe he was second in receptions and yards. So you factor all that in. It's not that big of a stretch, but I was just very surprised that I didn't see anybody have him ranked as wide receiver 1 overall. So that's the reason I really dove in and, really wanted to make a case about why, hey, we need to be talking about this a little bit more. And everybody remembers, what he did at the end of that Buffalo game, just catching that crazy touchdown. But I want to take him as Scott Fishbowl. I wish there was some possible way that I could have stacked Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. It wasn't going to happen, but I'm jealous of anyone who gets to do that.
Another thing for me with DeAndre, and it's why I feel like we should be taking him, top 3 at the position, certainly top 5 at the position, is that there's virtually no chance that a healthy DeAndre Hopkins falls outside the top 5. Like that's just especially in like a half point per first down, half point per reception, the sort of scoring format that we have here. There's just no way that if he plays 16, 17 games, he's not finishing as a top 5 receiver. Like they've enhanced their receiving core without really doing anything to threaten DeAndre Hopkins, right? Like it's Moore and it's Green, and maybe those things work out. It's better, and better is good for DeAndre, but there's nobody that they've added in the offseason who deserves to take any of Nuke Hopkins's looks, right? Like his situation is just outstanding. Again, he's not, as you say, it's like we're not drafting in a dynasty format here. And I think you're right. People do bring the sort of dynasty mentality to a lot of leagues. He's not 30. Like there's no reason to expect a decline. He didn't decline last year. Like I don't know. I'm with you. It's not a ton of disrespect because, everybody basically still has him in their top 10 and nobody's saying that you should avoid DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think that's out there, but man, I think there's a very compelling case for him as the overall wide receiver 1. I think nobody should be the least bit surprised if it actually happens this year. And he's in for another crazy target total. And if you believe in Kyler Murray, and I feel like everybody does, if you believe in Kyler Murray, then by default, you have to believe that DeAndre Hopkins is a candidate to be the overall wide receiver 1.